There are stories that slip through the cracks of history, whispered only in hushed tones, dismissed as folklore or the ramblings of frightened minds. But some stories, some events, leave behind a darkness so palpable, so suffocating, that it clings to the very walls where they happened. This is one such story. The story of the Villisca Axe Murders, a night of unspeakable horror that still haunts the small town of Villisca, Iowa, more than a century later. It was the night of June 9th, 1912. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of Villisca. The Moore family, Josiah and Sarah, their 4 children, and 2 visiting girls, retired to their beds just as they did every night. But this night would be different. This night would become a nightmare, etched forever into the town's soul. The next morning, the town awoke to a silence that was unnatural. The Moore family's house stood still, too still. Neighbors, concerned by the absence of any sign of life, ventured inside. What they found was a scene so grotesque, so chilling, that it seemed ripped from the pages of a horror novel. Every member of the Moore family and the 2 young visitors lay dead in their beds, their bodies brutally bludgeoned with an axe. The weapon, left embedded in the skull of one victim, was still stained with blood. The room reeked of death, the air thick with the metallic scent that clings to the aftermath of violence. But what made this massacre even more terrifying was the eerie silence that surrounded it. No signs of forced entry, no footprints outside, no clue as to who could have committed such a monstrous act or why. As the investigation unfolded, the town's darkest secrets began to surface. Suspicion fell on nearly everyone, from a traveling preacher with a violent past, to a local man with a grudge, to even the victims themselves. But no one was ever convicted. The case grew cold, the mystery deepening with each passing year. Yet the horror didn't end with the crime. The Moore house, left abandoned, became a magnet for the paranormal. Visitors reported hearing the faint sound of children laughing in the dead of night, only to find the house empty. Shadows moved where no light should reach. Cold spots chilled the air, and an oppressive feeling of dread settled over anyone who dared to enter. One chilling account comes from a family who rented the house decades later. They described waking to the sound of footsteps pacing the hallway, doors slamming shut on their own, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The children refused to sleep in their rooms, claiming a man with an axe stood at the foot of their beds. Paranormal investigators who have explored the house speak of a darkness that defies explanation. Electronic devices malfunction, cameras capture unexplained orbs and figures, and some have even fled in terror, overwhelmed by the malevolent energy that permeates every corner. What makes the Villisca Axe Murders so terrifying is not just the brutality of the crime, but the lingering presence of evil that refuses to rest. It is a reminder that some horrors are not confined to the past. They live on, waiting, watching, and sometimes reaching out. So, if you ever find yourself in Villisca, Iowa, and the night grows still and silent, beware. For in the shadows of that old house, the echoes of that terrible night still whisper. And some say, if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint scrape of an axe against wood and the soft, chilling cries of those who never left. But here's the question that still haunts everyone who hears this tale. What if the evil that took those lives never truly left? What if, even now, in the quiet hours of the night, something stirs within that house? Something waiting for the next visitor to cross its threshold. Some say the spirits of the Moore family are trapped, desperate to tell their story. Others whisper of a darker force, an entity born from the violence itself, feeding on fear and sorrow, growing stronger with every soul that dares to enter. So, I leave you with this. If you ever find yourself near Villisca and the old Moore house stands before you, will you have the courage to step inside? Will you listen to the silence, or will you run as fast as you can? Because sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones told, but the ones waiting to be lived. Tell me in the comments, would you spend a night in the Villisca house? What do you think really happened that night? And if you've ever experienced something unexplainable, share your story. the darkness is listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because the next nightmare might just be closer than you think.